Hi everyone, so I'm going to have a go today at a nice sunset crashing wave scene. So I am using Saunders Waterford. It's a nice cotton paper. It is 12 by 9, it's rough and it's £140. I've actually got it on a block, so it's nice and manageable. I've drawn out very lightly, so just below the crashing waves and the lines, and then the foamy waves just here. So what I would do is I'll pop a photo of the photo up so you can screenshot that and print it out if you want to, and a photo of my drawing up that you can screenshot and print out if you want to. So the brushes that I'm using today, I have got a squirrel mop brush, a round number 10, a round number 6, and I'll possibly use a rigger as well at some point. Colours wise, I've got a mixture of some Cotman colours and some Daniel Smith colours, and I'll talk you through those as I go. So I'm going to get some water onto the sky. So cotton paper will always take plenty of water, so you want to take your time. I'm coming to the sea, and so I'm just wetting the sky. And you're looking for a nice sheen, not too many puddles. You can come over it twice, that's always a good thing to do, so you get a nice even coat. If it's dull, it's dry, so you can always look and check that it's all wet. You want that nice even sheen. Okay, so I'm just going to pop my photo so I can see it well for reference. Somewhere. Okay. So I'm going to start with a little bit of raw sienna. So I've dipped my round number 10 into some water, then I'm going straight into the neat raw sienna that's out the tube. I'm going to sweep this in. Dip back into the water and sweep in. I'm doing like big smiles in the sky, so I'm stroking through and I'm leaving a tiny bit of white in places. Give my brush a rinse. And then this is quinacridone or quinacridone, however you want to say it, Rose, and this is a Daniel Smith colour. I'm going to start to come in with that. Again, I'm doing these little smiles and sweeping through. Just keep loading your brush up so that you've got diluted colour, but the paper's already diluted with the water. And we're just starting to get this nice rosy sunset feel. It's really important you try to keep a little bit of white. Towards that centre, and you're going to blend a little bit that's left on the brush through so that it's not too strong. I'll give that brush a rinse. Then here I've got a bit of Daniel Smith Cobalt Violet. I'm going to come in with that. And coming right the way down to the water's edge. It's a lovely hue. It's one of my favourites. If you haven't got this colour, you could just make a purple. If you're using Cotman, you could use a little bit of violet or purple itself. So there's other options. You could use cobalt blue and rose together. That makes a lovely purple that's very similar. So it's just working with what you've got. You can take a little bit in up the top here. Cotton paper gives you plenty of time to work, or should do. To get a really, really nice glow. Rinse that brush out. And then here I've got a little bit of Daniel Smith Ultramarine Blue. I also want to use a little bit of towards the bottom. So I'm just touching in places. It's going to help to accentuate that wave. I'm going to rinse my brush. Just dab that off. So it's nearly dry. Then I can just sweep this blue and blend it a little bit. So I'm blending on the paper. You mustn't take a wet brush in at this stage. You've got to make sure that it's dry if you're blending. It's just because I want to just blend that in a little bit so that it's not too potent. That's got a really nice effect. Okay, so whilst it's nice and wet, I'm going to take out a little bit of a sun. So I found a 1p piece and I'm going to pop some kitchen towel around it. And I'm going to choose where I want my sun to be. Keep it nice and low. And then I'm just going to pop that on and hold it. And it's just lifting out that extra little bit of light. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off now. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. It's got a lovely feel. And you can see the sunset in there. So I'm now going to come on to the beach area, which is only a little area, just down this bottom section here. So I'm wetting it with my brush. And then I'm using my round number 10, dipping into water, then dipping into the raw sienna first of all. So we're going to get a nice base on. The simplest of pictures can be the most effective when you're learning. And this is a really simple scene, but it will be really, really effective. So I'm rinsing my brush off. I'm going to pick up some clean water, and then I'm going to pick up some of the rose and bring that through. What you've got is a little bit of the colour reflecting from the sky onto the sand. So we're just picking up a couple of these colours. I'm going to pick up a bit of the cobalt violet. Just dab that through as well. Then I'm going to go down to my round number 6. I want to be a little bit more in control and I want to get some shadow along that water's edge. So this colour here is Daniel Smith Moon Glow. So I'm going to use a little bit of that. You want a little bit of water. You're going to dab into the colour, but you want this to be fairly thick. You don't want it to go too far. So I'm going to come on this edge now. So if you didn't have Moon Glow, it is something like a sepia would work for this. It's a beautiful colour and a great shadow colour. So I'm just coming along the edge where the water is, basically. And then I'm going to pick up a small flat. Now I haven't mentioned a small flat, but this is the easiest brush to do this with. So I'm going to make sure it's dry. And then I'm just going to pull that shadow out on the surface. I'm keeping the brush horizontal. It's a slight off horizontal angle. Probably about, well, I don't know. It's this angle. I I can't remember my angles from school. It was just pulling out, and it just gives a surface. I think it's like 35 degrees maybe, or 45 degrees. Just gives a surface to the beach. So you've got that beautiful shadow that's going to work on the water. And then you've got this as the surface and the sand on the beach. Okay, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So if I come back to the original photograph, the next section that I'm going to wet is this background section that I'm running my finger over. So I'm going to try to do this without masking fluid, because not everybody has masking fluid. And so we're going to try to tackle this section by section. So I'm going to use my round number 10 to wet. We're going to come down to the foamy bit, so we're doing this bit in the back. So choosing a section and working with it. It doesn't matter if you don't quite get the water everywhere, just try and get as much as you can on that section. It will still work. Just come over it twice. And then I'm going to drop down to my round number 6, so I'm nicely in control. So the first colour that I'm going to use is the ultramarine blue. That's going to shoot quite a lot. So I'm dipping my number 6 in. I'm using a horizontal stroke. I'm thinking about these foamy bits at the back and not getting too much colour in those. I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt violet and sweep some of that in. So I would like this to stay fairly distant, and then as it comes forward we're going to get a little bit bolder. So the violet always works as a great distance colour. If I dab into a lot of water and just take a tiny bit of the violet, I can bring some of this through to create a bit of shadow. We don't want high white in that background. So this is watered down cobalt violet going in here. Then I'm going to dab into a little bit of the rose. Just dab that through in places as well in that black back area. So we're just catching the light. And then I'm going to take a little bit of the moon glow and bring that in. Around this foamy wave, so I want it to be darker. Then we've got a big sweep here. So you basically just want that variety of tone in there. Okay, and then what I've got now is some cotton bud. So I'm just going to wet one. And the first thing that I'm going to do is soften this edge. So with that wet cotton bud, I'm doing a circular motion before this dries hard, and you can swap to a different clean bit of cotton bud. I want to get this edge softer because this is this soft wave. Now what might happen is you might wet it and it might run into it, in which case just grab a dry cotton bud and come back over, and that will stop it running. I'm doing like a little circular motion. And then you can do the same little circular motion. It can be with a wet or dry cotton bud, just to start to foam that background wave. Little tiny circular motion. If you've got odd little bits of white, don't worry, that will still work. I can see that working now. And then with that dry cotton bud as well, you can just bring out a few little bits of light in places, but don't take it out on dark. You want that dark bit to still stay there. This bit here you want to be hard. That's going to give us a hard edge. Okay, so I'm going to dry that bit off. Okay, so we're going to continue to tackle this beautifully in sections. So I've got my round number 10. I'm coming into some ultramarine blue, and this is going to be the next section. So I'm going straight on to dry because I want to see where I'm going to get this little white edge, because I want this white edge where the water is highlighted. And I'll only get that if I'm doing dry, really. This is why you need to choose a big brush and move quickly. So this is the ultramarine coming in, and this is just a small section that we're going to do. So I'm going to come down to that foamy area. And you can see how I'm drawing with the brush. Nice sweeping motion. I'm going to come into some of the moon glow and bring some of that in as well, sweeping down. So we're creating that movement in the water by the action of the stroke that we're doing, bringing that through. So it should be really nice and effective. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the rose in there as well, just in places. And then I've got a tiny bit of something really beautiful here called cobalt turquoise, which is one of my favourite Winsor & Newton colours, and I'm going to bring a little bit of that in there as well. Just bring that through. Okay, so now I need to look at softening. So which bits do I need to soften? I'm going to soften this edge because it's part of that wave. So this is a damp cotton bud again. So we're going to soften that in. And then I'm going to choose to just soften in this bit with a bit of water. So this is clean water. I'm going to push down and I'm touching the paint but not moving it. And can you see how I'm pushing the brush further down? This is called softening in, and that's just going to give a lovely edge. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. I've dried that off. You can see how this is now coming together. So with my round number 10, I'm going to come into this crashing wave, and we want a little bit of shadow into it. So this is water coming in, and I'm coming down to that bottom wave. I'm going to use the ultramarine blue and just bring this along the bottom edge. So this is my round number 6. I'm being very, very light with the ultramarine blue. You do not want to eliminate the white now. This is all about just getting a little bit of shadow in. So take the tiniest bit on the brush and load the brush up with water. And I want you to focus on getting that nice edge to that bottom wave. And not really focus too much on what you're doing in this top bit. So I'm just going to randomly dab a few bits of shadow in. And then I'm going to do the same with a tiny bit of the cobalt turquoise. It's a beautiful colour. I'm just going to keep this nice and light. Less is more. It's something I say frequently to my students. Less is more. If I take up a little bit of that moon glow now, and I'm coming very lightly just towards the bottom and hitting that bottom edge and just letting it flow in places. So This is going to help define that next edge. But what you don't want to do is put it all the way along the edge. You're going to take little bits and just drop it in. If you do it all the way along, it looks false. You're going to get hints of dark and it's going to flow. If it doesn't flow enough, then just take a wet brush. It doesn't even have to be damp, just wet, and just flow it up a little bit. The beauty of crashing waves is you can have a watermark in it and it works quite nicely. So that's got a really nice glow about it. I'm going to let that bit settle and dry, and I'm going to come to this bit underneath that wave. So I'm going to get a bit of water on this. So this is around number 10 again. I think if you're doing this tutorial, we need to watch it through first of all, so that you get an idea of what you're aiming for, and then have a go. So this is the ultramarine blue, and you'll notice that I'm doing a horizontal stroke. So I'm with my round number 6 again. I'm keeping it nice and light. And I'm touching in with a horizontal stroke. If you've missed bits of water, that's absolutely fine, because you get little bits of highlights on this bit, and this works really nicely. Then I'm going to come underneath the edge of that wave there. So this is all ultramarine blue at the minute, just fairly light. Again, you're stroking to follow the pattern of the wave. Load my brush up really well with the water, and I'm going to come along the edge. I'm not taking my brush off, trying to explain how I do this stroke. So I'm holding it down and dragging along and wiggling at the same time. So you're getting that shadow on that bottom edge. So hold the brush down. That's a bit dark. Hold the brush down, wiggle, keep the brush down and come along that edge. You're going to get a random shadow appearing. It's gone a bit darker there, but it's working, so I'm just going to take it a little bit darker down here. I always try to explain how I do the strokes, because I think that that's important for you to learn. I'm going to take a little bit of that moon glow again. I'm going to pop a little bit of that in places. Now this has dried a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to blend that through. These things happen. So damp brush, I've dabbed it off on the kitchen towel. I'm just going to touch that paint. So if you take a wet brush on, it will lift everything, but a damp brush you can just manipulate. And that's just enough. I'm going to take a little dab of the cobalt turquoise. Just take a little bit of that through. You can choose whatever colours you want, really. It's just a pretty scene to do. And then I'm going to just pick up a tiny bit, again reflecting the colours from the sky. A little bit of the rose, just in places, because that would reflect down there as well. You can see how that's starting to work, so I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, so we've just got this section to do now. So I'm going to take a little bit of water through with my round number 6, and then it's a similar process. we're going to come in with a little bit of the ultramarine. You can wiggle through. If you get odd bits of dry, it will work. It's all about just creating a bit of shadow. I mean, that works just as it is anyway. You're going to wiggle, then you're going to dab. So I'm dotting and dabbing towards the top, just to break up that shadow, that white, sorry, with a bit of shadow. You can see that that's working already. I'm going to dip into the cobalt cobalt turquoise. You know what I mean. And bring some of that in as well. And then I'm just dabbing off a rinsed brush, and I'm just going to move that around a little bit because it's stayed put quite a lot. So I'm just wiggling it around. Then I'm going to come into the moon glow and wiggle that around a little bit, but very, very lightly touching. These odd little dabs, just creating a little bit of dark shadow here and there, work really nicely. You can see that coming together. So I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry. So what I'm going to start to do now is bring in some additional ripples and strokes to create movement. So I'm going to come into the cobalt violet with a wet brush, and this is my small flat, and then I'm going to bring that in at the back. So this is going to be the start, so keeping horizontal strokes. Just going to start to define that a little bit more. I'm not going to come into the foamy bit, just into the darker bit, but I just want to create that little bit of movement and a little bit more definition. The easiest way to do that is with a horizontal line. If I pick up my round number 6 and come into the cobalt violet, we're going to stick with that colour. I can bring a little bit more in places just to define that foaminess behind. So we're thinking underneath with each of these foamy waves now, we're thinking underneath. We don't need to define the top, we need to define underneath. You don't need to define everywhere. So if I come all the way along with one line, it's going to be too much. So we don't do that. Just blend it through and take a little bit of that moon glow is just going to be a shadow colour every time. So the round number 6, you're just dabbing in and it's creating that jaggedy edge that works as the foamy wave. And you just want little bits in places. It's just enough to create a hint of shadow. You can see how much now that's got additional definition just from those few little bits. Okay, so then I'm going to look, so we've done that one and I'm just working my way down. So I'm looking at this has got a fair amount of strokes in it. I'm just going to add a few more, so I'm going to use the cobalt turquoise, just bring through a few more directional strokes. I'm not going mad. This is with my round number 6. I'm poised with the other brush as well. They won't show hugely too much. But all I'm thinking is I want additional movement in here. So if I bring a little bit across here and a little bit across here, this is then flowing those together. I'm going to pick up my round number 10, make sure it's clean, pick up some clean water, and then I'm going to do that softening in again. So just pushing the brush down, touching the paint, And that's just connected those two bits together with those two strokes. In fact, I can do another little bit of a stroke here. And then with that damp brush, just touch again, connecting in. It's all about connecting this and getting that movement in. Okay, so with my round number 10, I'm going to dip into this cobalt turquoise. I'm going to make sure it's quite watery. I'm going to come across this front edge. So I'm adding a little bit of extra colour just to that front edge, glazing through. Then I'm going to rinse the brush, dab it into some water, and I'm just going to touch in places at the top and pull it at that sort of 45-degree angle. So I've got a little bit extra added in there, not too much, just a little bit extra. And I'm actually going to take up a little bit, so this is Hansa yellow. I'm going to take a little bit of that just in at the front as well. Now what this will do is shoot that bit forward. It's making it a little bit more turquoisey green, and it's different, so it will shoot it forward. And that's really nice. It's looking like it's caught the light really nicely. Okay, so I'm now looking at this bit here, and I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue. So I'm going to do something very similar, which is just that bottom edge. Blend it in a little bit. You'll still see the colours underneath and the tone. This is all about connecting everything together. I've done it in sections, and now I want this to connect. So I'm going to sweep some of that blue out, wet my brush, nice clean water, dab a little bit off. I'm just going to touch in places, so I don't want that to be a total hard edge. And then I'm going to touch in places on here, so I've swept some of the blue through. So the actions that I'm doing is at the bottom, I'm trying to connect both bits. I'm going to take a little bit of that cobalt violet in as well. Cobalt turquoise. Sometimes I lose my words. At least I realise I lose my words and tell you the right thing. See those little bits? You can just sweep those through. So I'm going to do a few sweepy bits of cobalt turquoise. If you didn't have cobalt turquoise, a great alternative is Viridian with a little bit of white in. That works wonderfully well. It's not a colour that everybody can afford, but you can work to make something very similar. So I'm just doing a few strokes. Some of these bits are still damp and it's going to blend through, and I'm doing them in sort of a cross-hatch motion, so that I'm getting a nice effect of the water. I'm going to take a few little dabs of that turquoise just back in here. I don't want anything to be too white, and that's what I'm looking at now. I'm thinking, is that too white? This is what tends to happen. Okay. So I'm now looking at this wave here. I'm going to take some of the ultramarine blue in. So it's my round number 10. I've loaded it with water. Do not hit the top white bit of the other one. I'm just dabbing in just to create some additional shadow. Just go nice and gently when you're doing all of this. You don't want to go too fast and then find that it's too strong. So this is a little bit of water. I'm just softening that in a little bit. Don't want it to be too strong. I'll pick up my round number 6. Pick up some of the turquoise. Bring some of this in. So little wiggles. And it's within the wet of the blue that we're coming in. It's just a wet brush, just wiggling those bits around a bit more. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the rose. Dab some of that in. Then I'm going to just take some of it back out. There's a pattern here. You don't want it to be too strong. You're applying, but then you're just taking with a wet or damp brush a little bit, moving it around and out. I'm trying to capture the glow from the sky without losing all the white. Now if you get to a point you think, oh, I've gone too far and I don't know what I'm doing, you can always take a little bit of kitchen towel. I don't say this very often, but you can just dab a little bit out. So if it goes really wrong, which mine hasn't, but I'm just going to show you, just take a piece of kitchen towel. You see I've just changed that, and that's because I want it to be clean. And just dab a little bit out. You can get away with it on water. You can't really get away with dabbing on a sky, but you can get away with it on the water. I want to keep that nice crashing wave. Just going to sweep now a few strokes that way, so some vertical strokes sweeping over, so you get that feel of the wave coming over. It's all about drawing with the brush. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. So there we go, I've popped a mount round so you can appreciate the full effect of the painting. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's got some really interesting techniques, and it shows you how you can create water and waves without the need for masking fluid. So please do like, subscribe and share. Leave a comment if you want to let me know what other tutorials you'd like. I shall pop a video here and a playlist here, and I shall see you next time. Bye.